I would just like to start by giving you a few dates and places. Venice, 1637. Manaus, Brazil, 1896. Cairo, 1871. And Seoul, Korea, 1988. What is the common link between all these places and dates? The dates really have nothing in common, but what ties up all these places is the common factor of opera. Manaus, Brazil, inaugurated its opera house in the middle of the Amazon in 1896. In Cairo in 1871 was the first performance of Aida by Verdi. In Seoul, Korea in 1988, they opened the Olympics, the cultural side of the Olympics, with an opera commissioned from Giancarlo Menotti, who was an Italian-American composer, who was the founder of the famous Spoleto Festival. Venice, 1637. How do all these things tie in? As you can see, I've given you a pretty good idea of what would be considered a rather global situation. Opera, as I said, is the common denominator, and Venice in 1637 was the place where it all really started. Venice opened up its first public, or the world's first public opera house in 1637 in a theatre called San Cassiano. Now, opera had been invented, if I could put it in inverted commas, in Florence at the end of the 1500s. But it was in Venice that making opera a public entertainment, or available to the public, caused opera to become the global phenomenon that is obvious from the places I've mentioned where opera actually takes place. Venice, in that sense, is a world leader, culturally speaking, because it all came from there. But my course is not only going to be talking about opera, which will form, obviously, a substantial part of the course, because in the time that opera was taking off, and with the presence of one of the world's great composers, Monteverdi, present in Venice at the time, that period of the early 1600s was a time of great intellectual liberty and ferment that took place at the time. We must remember that at that particular time, Venice was without the rather, how can I say, excessive control of the Jesuits who had been expelled. So opera becomes a vehicle for political, social, and moral debate through the librettos of the opera. I don't want to spend a lot of time because this is not a lecture on opera, but I would also like to point out that the century preceding that, the 16th century, Venice was equally important in fields of particularly choral music. The rise of the madrigal, which is probably the most famous and most widely performed musical form in that period, had its greatest flowering in Venice of that time. So my course will be, above all, focusing on the 15th and 16th centuries. Obviously, everybody will have heard of Vivaldi, who was a product of the 18th century, so I will be also focusing on that period, even though by that time, Venice has really gone into a fairly obvious artistic and intellectual decline, with obviously brief exceptions in the music of Vivaldi, Tiepolo in the world of art, and then of course literature by Goldoni and one or two other minor characters. Venice, after its fall in 1797, has become instead an object. The preceding centuries which I've been talking about, you can see Venice as being an agent of musical activity, musical innovation. But in the 19th century, Venice becomes an object of musicians and writers, in even a negative sense. Now, I just want to very briefly refer back to Manaus in Brazil, because they opened that opera house with a performance of La Gioconda, an opera by Ponchielli. And in La Gioconda, we have the the depiction of Venice as being a sinister and oppressive place, which is the reversal, if you like, of the myth of Venice that the Venetians tried to project in the Renaissance. The myth of Venice as being this beacon of freedom, this divinely ordered place, which was in such obvious contrast to the oppression of the princes and kings that ruled around Venice at the time. And my course will also be showing how music took a part in promoting this myth of Venice. I don't think I can stay too much longer. I would just like to say that I hope to see all of you, well, many of you in the course. I must also thank the Venice International University for asking me to do this course, because I find it an absolutely fascinating period of time. It's opened my eyes as a musician to a rather particular time and place, which in music in general we tend to treat rather superficially, because obviously music has such a global reach, if you like, and so it's been a great opportunity for me to investigate in more detail this rather fascinating period. So thank you to the university, and thank you all for listening to me, and I'm sorry I had to go because I've got a train.